Hello, welcome back to IrishRacing.com's Jump to It show. We've got an Antepost Cheltenham special for you on the back of the Dublin Racing Festival. Plenty of high-level action from Leopardstown, of course, and plenty of market movers as well. We're going to try and discuss all of the big feature races, all of the stories, all of how the odds have changed and potentially not changed in some cases. But joining me as ever, we have Stephen Harris from Betting Expert, Ed Quigley, and also Vincent Finegan as one of the panel today. So Vincent, I'll start with you as well, being the Irish angle and the Irish contingent on the show. Take us through the Dublin Racing Festival, the reaction it was, and how good was it to actually see a lot of the British coming over, and how much is the meeting actually changing for the better?
Well, it was terrific to see the British audience coming over. 27% of the audience was supposed to come from the UK, but the horses didn't come was the issue. That's the one little negative to it all, is that the UK trainers haven't latched on to the Dublin Racing Festival and want to get involved, but hopefully they will as the years go by. The best of the Irish ran. Willie Mullins certainly ran everything he had through the kitchen sink at it. Won, 6 of the 8 grade ones over the weekend were won by Willie Mullins. Gordon Elliott won one as well, and Barry Connell the other one. We've got an issue, we know, in Ireland with the dominance of Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott. So if you take the Sunday card on Dublin Racing Festival, all 7 races were won between them. Willie had 5 and Gordon had 2. So it's not it's not all rosy in the garden for the small yards. But having said that, from a punter point of view and from a spectator point of view, it's great to see a festival in Ireland mid-season where we're seeing the very best horses, almost the very best horses between Britain and Ireland ran, because they're nearly all trained in Ireland as it is. So we certainly saw some fantastic racing, some great spectacles, a few blips along the way, because as the anti-post markets, I've never seen so much turmoil in them in previous years. Just every single race seems to be all over the place. As we saw with the likes of Facile Vega getting beat, Lossy Mouth and others as well. So lots to talk about in this show, but it was a fantastic weekend's racing, perfect weather, everything went well. So we shall discuss it now and see the effect it had on the anti-post markets.
Absolutely. And Ed, just to bring you in as well, I mean, how good was it to see some of those heavy odds-on favourites turned over? Makes it a little bit more interesting come March, right?
Yeah, it does indeed. You're spot on. I think myself and with Stephen, when we were previewing this show, I think the phrase we used, the odds-on shots won't all win. Well, we got more than we bargained for, didn't we? We got absolute carnage. Blue Law beating at short price, Facile Vega coming home legless. Appreciate it was a hot favourite and turned over. There's probably a couple more I've forgotten on the way. There was so many going on there. Yeah, it was a weekend of Lossy Mouth as well. She was turned over at short price. Yeah, it was a weekend of massive upsets. Of course, Willie Mullins won all the races. He didn't win with his first string and looked quite annoyed that the second or third strings had mopped up in the process. But look, it was a really exciting weekend of racing, no doubt about that. And Vincent hit the nail on the head, and I absolutely love it. The anti-post markets are in absolute disarray. There's got to be lurkers in there. You've got all the horses just keep beating each other. No one knows who's going where, what's beating what, who's running where. The downside is, I suppose, the non-run-and-own market kind of angles are totally saturated. You're getting bottom price on everything these days. I'm still of the old school brigade. I'm on the machine looking for a 50 to 1 non-runner. I like the win any value pop and back my own judgment as to where a horse probably will line up. But it's a really exciting weekend, and as ever, Joe, it's posed more questions, and it's probably given us answers in the aftermath in regards to going forward to Cheltenham and beyond.
And Stephen, just to bring you in here as well as our resident pro punter, looking at the anti-post markets all over the place at the moment. I mean, what kind of takes your fancy right now?
Well, it has shaken them all up. There's been a lot of horses who've drifted. I mean, personally, I think a lot of horses haven't drifted enough. I mean, something like Facile Vega. I know all the sort of clock watchers who obviously get fortunes from betting their opinions on jump racing have made excuses for Facile Vega. But I can tell you, having watched horse racing for about 30 years, there's something wrong with Facile Vega. It wasn't Paul Townend's fault. Willie Mullins called it headless. I mean, they did go off a little bit too quickly. There's no doubt about that. And if you compare it to State Man, who had the run of an absolute dawdle, then certainly they did go off too quickly. But the horse stopped physically amiss. I mean, they don't come back from that in 5 weeks. They're going to ride him differently at Cheltenham, drop him out. Well, he'll be pulling hard and immediately 14 to 1 on Betfair in the Supreme if he gets there. 7 to 2 is the worst price I think I've ever seen about a horse who's got beaten 300 yards stopping a miss 5 weeks earlier. I mean, I must admit, we were saying off air, I will be amazed if Facile Vega runs at Cheltenham. So if you're willing to use up some of your sort of liquidity on the exchanges, I think he's very much one to lay at the moment.
And Vincent, I mean, do you share that view as well? I mean, do you think he is a doubt for the Supreme?
I think he has to be, with the fact that, in my opinion, I agree with Stephen. There's something wrong with the horse. If you look at the way the horse stopped in the straight, that's not true form in any sense. And it's not just tiredness, I don't think, either. There was something amiss. There's no doubt about it. I think it'll come to light in the next week or two. And if there was something amiss, even if it was a pulled muscle, like, it's still only 5 weeks to Cheltenham. You would have to worry. It's less than 5 weeks to Cheltenham, because that'll be the first race on the first day as well. So, like, it really is a worry. I certainly wouldn't be able to back that horse at this stage at 7-2. I'd agree with Stephen. That's not a bet for me.
I think that leads us nicely then into the Supreme Novices. We'll bring up the market. Ed, just take us through the potential contenders then. If Facile Vega, if we're saying we're agreeing that it's a lay, where would you be going?
Well, we've got about 3 hours just on this race, Joe. Is that right? Yeah. No, it's absolute bonkers, isn't it? I mean, Marine Nationale, by default of staying in his box and not doing anything and letting everyone else beat each other, is almost by default coming into near favouritism now. But if you were going to be really finicky and look at Marine Nationale's Royal Bomb form, well, he made an error at the last, but he beat Irish Point and Neck. Well, Irish Point was racing the ambulance at the weekend in that race. He was beating a different postcode. So the kind of form on the... I'm not convinced it's in particularly great form. The problem is you could go through every single runner in the top 15 of this anti-post market and pick holes through all of them. I wonder if we've got another Eberzion type year on our cards here. I was going back through some old races. Go back to 2007. Davy Condon on the Willie Mullins 9th string. Went round on the bridle. Won it 40-1. I think he won one more race 3 years later, and that was it. And it was just one of those. I've never heard Cheltenham go as quiet. I have actually. I heard when after Annie Power had fallen, 5 minutes later, you could hear a pin drop. But this was just like everyone looking through their program. Who's this lovely grey? Who is he? Never heard of him. And I get a feeling this is. I agree with Stephen. This is much more wide open than the market would lead you to believe, and in part it is because no one really is sure who's going to line up, and mainly that is because of the dominance of Willie Mullins having about 97 horses entered in all novice hurdle events. So he said himself, we're going to wait to the 5-day stage or even the declaration stage, and then we'll split our battalions accordingly. I mean, look, to save my waffle, the two I would be really interested in if they lined up. Number one, Impair and Pass, I believe, is going to the Ballymore. At least it sounds they're going that way. I think they'd be mad not to run this horse here, given the question marks about the others. He's just absolutely oozed class in everything he's done. He dropped back to the minimum trip to test his speed in the Moscow Flyer, and he showed he had speed. Now, Willie Mullins has often used the Moscow Flyer as his kind of springboard for his Supreme horse. I think Dice at Dynamo won it last year. You go back through, I think Duvan, maybe in Votor as well. It's often Get a Bird that won it and then went off favourite for the Supreme. It's often been his Supreme angle, yet they seem adamant he's the 2.5 miler. I wouldn't be shocked if he got rerouted here. And other than that, again, as I say, I think Mullins has got about 15 in here, hasn't he? There's one at a huge price, Diverge. And I think it was beaten about 20 lengths by High Definition on his stable debut. It was his first start for over a year, but then absolutely dotted up in a minor event last week with Paul Townend on board. Didn't have to come off the bridle. Sounds like he's going to go straight there. He could be anything, but it's kind of trying to sort the wheat through the chaff. In it, I can't see what else Diverge is going to run in at the festival. Whereas if you look at that grid, Joe, there's probably 10 horses who've got multiple entries above him. And so I wouldn't be shocked by kind of process of elimination. He ended up shorted just because I see him as, of all the Mullins entries, he's pretty much one who's guaranteed to run in the race. Whether he's got the class or not, I don't know. So it's all in all an absolute head scratcher. But bottom line would be, if Imperial Pass did run in this, I would make him favourite, and I think he would have a stunning chance. Put it this way. I mean, non-runner, no bet. You're looking 4-1 Imperial Pass, 7-2 Facile Vega. To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. As Stephen says, Facile Vega, the stopwatch celebrities can make all the excuses they want about. He went 18 lengths quicker through the first 6, and his right leg's cadence was different to this. And forget that the horse at the moment, didn't it? There was he stopped to a walk. Horrendous price in my view. Marine Nationale unbeaten, but his form not amounting to much. So I'm on pair and pass, non-runner, no bet. and we'll take it from there, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Vincent, for you as well, any differing views for you?
Well, I'd agree with lots of that. The other one is Marine National is a very, very good horse. I wouldn't mind so much the run with Irish Point. If you go back and watch that race again, Marine National was running all over them and made a mistake at the last. So that's the reason there was only a neck in it at the finish. I think if Marine National had jumped the last that day in Fairyhouse, wouldn't have come off the bridle to beat Irish Point and the rest that day, which include the likes of Champ Kiley and that. I think Marine National is a very, very good horse. Barry Connell is obviously bullish. He thinks he has two serious contenders for Cheltenham. Goodland, which won the first race at the weekend, the Dublin Racing Festival, goes for the longer distance race, the Ballymore. And he's adamant that he's the two horses in the right race. I still have a sneaking suspicion Marine National wants further than 2 miles. But having said that, plenty of horses who've won the Supreme have wanted further than 2 miles. He will be a worthy favourite on the day, in my opinion, because I'm not sure what Willie Mullins will run. I think in pair, a pass will go for the other race. Ilete Tomp has a chance, and then the other one here is probably won't run here is Gaelic Warrior. But Gaelic Warrior, I'd love to know what the handicapper was thinking he was doing in Ireland. Gave the horse a mark of 143 for a handicap at the weekend. Got punted from 2-1 into odds on, and won with his head in his chest. How could he think that this was a 143? This is a horse that we've known for over a year. They've had to change the handicap rules in Cheltenham and everything over this horse. This is a horse that we know is a 160 plus. So why was he given a 143 rating? I really can't understand it. And like he'd ample opportunity with the previous 2 wide margin wins over hurdles to give this a mark of anything. Make up your number. But 143 was ridiculous, and no wonder Willie went and went the handicap route again. I think that's the end of the handicap route for Gaelic Warrior, in my opinion. I know the horse heads some of the handicap markets for some of the Cheltenham handicaps, county hurdles and others, but I couldn't see it getting into a handicap after whatever they're going to lump on it after that. But that could be a contender here, Gaelic Warrior, no doubt about it. Definitely a grade 1 class horse at least.
And Stephen as well, which horse you got your eye on for the Supreme?
Well, I mean, it's a guessing game, isn't it? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, looking at those prices, I mean, it's like a bags race at Crayford, the front 6, isn't it? I mean, at least Dick Turpin wore a mask. I mean, I know they're non-runner, no bet, so they feel like they're being a victim putting up prices, but every single one of those horses, or any of them, will be bigger, whatever turns up on the day. I mean, it can't possibly be less than 7-2, the field on the day. The one thing about it, because there's no standout contender, people are going to run horses in this because they're going to fancy winning it. Rather than the sort of huge field handicaps and all the rest of it later in the week. So I think there'll be a maximum field, and it'll probably be 4 or 5-1 the field on the day. I mean, just to touch on one who isn't from Ireland, rare edition of Charlie Longston, who's 3 from 3 over hurdles, runs at Huntingdon this week, hopefully before this show goes, after this show goes out. But we'll find out more about him. He's won 3 from 3. Obviously, I always say the same thing. One suspects the English form is at least a stone inferior. That's been borne out over the last few years. It's certainly borne out by the English runners that went over to run at the Dublin Race. I must come back to Vincent's, actually. I wouldn't worry about English trainers wanting to send horses over there. They will not be doing so. I mean, they don't even want to run them at Cheltenham. Now, you've scared them all off, Vincent. They're absolutely terrified. I mean, I always remember Cheltenham last year, and in fact the last 2 years, Dan Skelton and Paul Nicholls red in the face, fuming with all their hot pots getting beaten 3 fences in every single race behind the Irish. And I think it's going to be a similar story this year. I think we've raised the white flag. I mean, a lot of these, they're already looking to Aintree with some of these horses, and they're not going to fancy running them against Willie or Gordon or Henry or, all the others. So for my selection in this race, to come back to that point, is Marine National. And Vincent's right. I mean, it was really impressive the other day, then hit the last and maybe dossed about a bit in front. But I think he is the form choice, clearly. And the one big advantage with Marine National is he's definitely, God willing, going to run in this race. He's not entered anywhere else. This is his target. And that doesn't apply to all those others at sort of 7-2 and 4-1 in the market around him.
All right, well, I think that covers the Supreme just about, and I know we could go on and on about that race. But let's move on to the Arkle next. Obviously, we spoke about, previewing the Dublin Racing Festival, that the Irish Arkle could even be almost better than the Cheltenham counterpart. But Ed, just give us your assessment of our El Fabiolo at Leopardstown and what you make of the Cheltenham Arkle.
Oh, it was a brilliant performance, wasn't it? I mean, that was such a red-hot race beforehand. It was great to see Willie Mullins through his entire 2 mile stable into one race, obviously with Appreciated in there and Dice at Dynamo. It was a sensational race, and it was a brilliant performance from Al Fabiolo, who clearly has a big engine, jumped a bit like a snooker table on his chase debut. Wasn't 100% fluent at a couple of obstacles, but by and large tightened up a lot in the jumping department, and won in great style. And now this sets up the potential brilliant clash, doesn't it, with John Bon, who's due to run, he'll be about 1-4 Pope to win the Kingmaker at Warwick on Saturday. That'll be his kind of warm-up. And then these two are going to lock horns once again at Cheltenham over fences. Obviously, what was about a neck or something between them when they met in the top novices in Aintree. It's kind of hard to split them again at the moment. The market's finding them fairly hard to split. But look, this was some performance, it has to be said. I think in time, Al Fabiolo will get a bit further. He clearly stays that trip out well. But as Vincent says, having stamina at Cheltenham on that big hill is never an issue. I suppose if we're going to try quickly through the most for the beta runners in there, Dice at Dynamo was just too free and fell in a hole. I wouldn't totally give up on him in the sense of this could end up a small field, and don't forget the Arkle at Cheltenham is a furlong shorter than the Irish Arkle on the old course, so that may play more to his kind of strengths in terms of a test of speed. I actually think Dice at Dynamo would be better at Aintree if I was going to pick somewhere for him to go. And the most remarkable performance of those in behind her, I suppose, I'll come back to one in a minute, but Appreciate It sounds like they're going to go up in trip for the Turners, but I just wonder at the age of 9 if we kind of see the ceiling of his ability. The horse I was going to come to was Banbridge, who was looking like he was going to get absolutely lapped before running on into second. Well, he's booked his place to the Turners, ground permitting, according to Joseph O'Brien. Again, he does have some good form over the minimum trip over fences at Cheltenham, and I just wonder if it was mine. I'd be tempted to almost roll the dice again at Cheltenham with the Arkle and that stiff finish. If they did go too hard, they might come back to him, but it sounds like they're going to head to the Turners. And all in all, I could see, as per most recent years, this cutting up into a very small field here. We could be looking at about a 6-runner race, of which the market is pretty much going to be, depending on, providing John Bon comes through unscathed at the weekend, you're looking at a match of John Bon versus Al Fabiolo, which is, as far as matches go, is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of what we want, isn't it? Like the top class, or top horses racing against each other in a thrilling contest. Vincent, let's have your view on the Arkle.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Ed has said here. The one thing for me is, if you go back to the race in Leopardstown, you turn into the straight, it looked like it was going to be a cracking finish, but it turns out El Fabiolo beats them 10 lengths, which was astonishing. I didn't think coming down to the last, there was no way any horse was going to win that race 10 lengths. So that was a hell of a performance, but you would just query the fact that, did he literally outstay them off a fast pace or something? Is that what happened here, where the others just dying a death in the closing stage? Because 10 lengths is a lot of ground from the last home in Leopardstown. So that would be the only little niggling thing here. But having said that, it was a fabulous performance. You have to grab those when you see them. John Bon is also producing some really good stuff in the UK. So between the two of them, it does look a dead match. As Ed said, when they raced in Aintree last year over hurdles, there was a neck between them. John Bon beat El Fabiolo a neck. If we get something similar in Cheltenham, it's going to be a cracking Arkle. If the two of them jump the last together, who's coming up that hill quickest? If they did jump it together, I'd be kind of going with El Fabiolo after what we saw at Leopardstown.
And Stephen as well, your view.
Yeah, I broadly agree with everything they've said. I mean, it was a devastatingly impressive performance. The horse fell virtually 3 out, El Fabiolo, and you thought, well, that's the end of him. And then he picked up and flew up. I mean, I agree with Vincent. I'm such a negative misery that my first thought is that Dies at Dynamo went off too hard and they all stopped. I mean, Appreciate It was hammered in the market and very disappointing, ultimately, having briefly looked like he'd play a big part turning for home. But I would imagine stamina is El Fabiolo's strong point. They'll work on his jumping. I'd imagine Daryl Jacobs going to ride him again at the festival. He's a brilliant jockey from off the pace. My one sort of, not a negative about John Bon, he's been flawless so far over fences. I'm sure he'll fly round Warwick at the weekend and make it 3 from 3. He's only ever won over fences in tiny fields. Now, that's not his fault. And he's also not seen another rival. And I suppose if you're going to be a sort of negative about a 5-4 chance, he beat Montmoral at Warwick. That form's not worked out at all. Montmoral's been really disappointing since, and so's West Cork. And then he flew round Sandown. He beat Boot Hill, who has franked the form in some ways at a certain level. You just suspect that the Irish form is much, much stronger over fences. Now, they've met over hurdles. They're virtually the same horse on Aintree running. is 5. You know, if you've got 5-2 El Fabioli against 5-4 John Bond, I could only back one horse, and it's the Irish horse.
Lovely. Yeah, let's see how the market shapes up closer to the time. All right, let's move on now to the champion hurdle. We have obviously the Irish counterpart won by State Man. Honeysuckle looks like she's probably going to be bowing out, at least from the champion hurdle picture, potentially going to the mares. But Ed, which way would you go? What kind of story do you want Honeysuckle to write on her kind of swan song?
I 100% agree with the decision to go for the mares. I understand the sentimentality of the champion hurdle, but does anyone want to see her in a, scrapping for fourth, 15 lengths behind the winner? To me, that's all just a bit underwhelming. Will have a favourites chance on the book to win the mares hurdle. She'll be going from taking on horses who are rated better than her to some in the top 10 in the betting who she'd be giving best part of a stone to in a handicap. So, I mean, crikey, yeah, she's going to go there with every chance. And the roof will come off the stand, even if she doesn't win, in the sense that, imagine turning it into the home straight. She's going to be within some sort of chance. I'll tell you, that really will be a goosebumps moment. And that race it's going to be a great race, that mare's race. The champion hurdle, as we say, is kind of cutting up into a very small field, dominated by two horses, almost similar to the Arc in that respect, where Constitution Hill looks like he's going to take all the beating. And State Man in any other year would be very viable champion hurdle winner. He's just probably going to get a little bit unlucky. Obviously, I'm having tipped him for the show back in tipped him on the show back in August, 14-1 with the champion hurdle. It's the best value loser I'm ever going to put up, I think, Joe, for this one. But look, it should be a good race. I actually think State Man will be the first horse to get Constitution Hill off the bridle. That's the thing. I think Constitution Hill will win, but I don't think we're going to see 18 lengths hard held and Nico waving to the screen and looking at himself on the TV and all that. I think State Man is a serious tool, and he's going to make Constitution Hill have to go through the gears. So I think it looks an absolute match. Maybe Vauban can improve, but his jumping keeps letting him down. He keeps making noticeable errors at the top level. We probably got away with it to an extent in juvenile company, just because his ability was so much more superior to everyone else. And then the rest look a million, and as you say, it leaves you a honeysuckle where connections have gone for the mares. I think that's the right idea. As I said, I just can't see, realistically, she's playing for third at best in the champion hurdle. And I know some people think it's kind of weak and she's the defending champion, she should go out on a sword. But at the end of the day, it's a last ever run on a race course. You probably want to give her the best opportunity of winning a race. It's not like they're coming back for another season. So she's going to go out with a bang. I think they've made the right decision. And I'm just looking for State Man to try and at least ruffle the feathers of Constitution Hill, who's been absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and Ed, you want to touch on it there as well with Vauban, but Vincent, is there any kind of value in that in the selection of Vauban?
I personally don't think so. I think it's a dead match. But having said that, someone who knows a little bit more about this than I do is Danny Mullins, and I saw a piece he did for Tote after the Dublin Racing Festival weekend, a recap on it, and he was asked about Constitution Hill versus State Man, and he put in and he thought about it for a while and then said, Vauban, there's still a day in this horse, and he could be right. Like Vauban, certainly there is a big day somewhere. Whether it's against Constitution Hill and State Man is the question, and I don't think so personally. I think it'll be a cracking race. It'll be one to look forward to, savour it with the very best horse in training at the moment is Constitution Hill on everything we've seen. Let's hope the two of them turn up, because State Man is obviously no back number either. It should be a cracking race. I expect Constitution Hill to win. I don't think 2-7 is value, but having said that, I don't think 5-2 or 3-1 State Man is value either. It's just one to watch, basically. And I do agree with Ed. They've made the right decision eventually with Honeysuckle. That was the only place she can go, is the mares. She needs to go out on a win if possible. But look, let it be her swan song, has to be at Cheltenham. If they'd have retired her after the Dublin Racing Festival, I don't think that would have been the right thing. I think Cheltenham is basically the mecca of national hunt racing. That's where she needs to go. She needs to do a tiger role and end her career there, and win, lose or draw, she will get an unbelievable reception when she comes in. And let's hope everything works out fine and she comes home safe and goes off to stud, and that's great stuff.
Absolutely. And Stephen, I think that kind of covers everything, but do you have anything extra to add?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the market now, I totally agree with Vince. I'm glad she's running at Cheltenham. I don't think she was that below par. I think her owner got it right. She said she's probably 90 or 95% of what she once was. She might have lost a little bit of speed. It was a tactical race at the Dublin Racing Festival. State Man was seen to absolute maximum effect, gifted a soft solo on the lead, jumping well, and he won pretty readily. Honeysuckle had every chance. Maybe Honeysuckle, you'd liked her to have had a bit more cover. She was wide and saw plenty of daylight, but she had every chance. Vauban, I do agree with Danny Mullins a bit in that I don't want to say he's not had a try twice this season, because obviously he's been running in Grade 1 races, but he's not been seen to best effect, has he? He's been dropped out and never landed a blow in races that haven't been truly run. So I wouldn't be surprised in a true run champion hurdle if Vauban was absolutely rattling up the hill. And the Snides, Joe, the Snide each way merchants are looking to play in this race, and Vauban, he could be the one. I mean, the other thing to say is I couldn't back Nico de Boinville at 7-2 on if he was on Arkle.
Oh,
but of course he could be on Arkle. This could be the next Arkle, couldn't it? So we'll see.
All right, lovely stuff. Well, one other race we wanted to just touch on as well for day one was the Boodles. Vincent, you actually had a bit of a long shot selection for us here. Just take us through it.
Yeah, the Boodles is an interesting race here. Now, just the big thing for this is that there's a race in Naas on Saturday, which is the 105 at Naas on Saturday. It's a rated novice hurdle, and 3 of the last 4 winners of the Boodles have run in this race at Naas. So you had Brazil, Aramax, and Band of Outlaws all won the race in Naas and went on to win the Boodles at Cheltenham. So I think anyone who's looking anti-post at a race like the Boodles, which is one of the races that still hasn't really got a clear picture at this stage, that'd be one to be looking at. For me, I thought potentially the Boodles winner ran in the Dublin Racing Festival, a horse called Takeo, a JP McManus owned horse trained by Willie Mullins. It was third to stablemates Gala Marceau and Lossiemouth. For me, that's all over. Boodles written all over it, and I'd be very surprised if that's not a serious contender on the day. But it's Ed who might have one in the Naas race that he thinks could be a contender for this Boodles.
Yeah, indeed. I know. It's just Metamorpheus, just getting the pronunciation correct there. Yeah, been purchased by Paul Nolan, I believe, and then leased out to a syndicate. But did it really nice style last time out, and saw an interview with Paul Nolan saying, look, the plan is to come to the aforementioned Naas race, which has a great history of producing Boodles winners, and all being well, by winning that, or at least go very close, should ensure, of course, goes up enough in the weights in order to get in. Just a fascinating sort at a big price. I think around 33-1 for there or thereabouts. But yeah, not normally the Boodles, as much as I like to get my anti-post book sorted the previous August, the Boodles is one I'm relying on Vincent for, and some Irish whispers, because it's obviously incredibly difficult knowing who's actually going to line up, and we don't know a lot about this race. But yeah, Tikal, no hiding place for the bookmakers now, kind of 4-1 non-runner no bet. If you're not on already, I'll be leaving that one alone and looking, look further down the list for some others, depending on where they think they're going to sneak in regards to their handicap marks.
All right, well, I think that covers it for at least the feature races on day one that I wanted to cover. But let's move on to day two. So we're going to talk about the Ballymore. And Ed, just take us through how that market is lining up.
Good question. Yeah, indeed. It's got another bit of a muddle look to it, but kudos to Emma Nagel, of course, on the Christmas review. She put up Good Land for the Ballymore at 20-1. That's looking a good bet now, isn't it? 4-1, and I've got to say, pretty impressed with that horse. The way he jumped and travelled in the Nathaniel Lacey, it was a very smart performance. It's hard to kind of pick holes in it, and it, by all accounts, it sounds like this. It's 100% the horse runs here, which again, harping back on like a broken record, but with Imperial Pass, Vassal Vega, Gaelic Warrior, Ilete Tomp, Champ Keeley, Irish Point in the pocket. I mean, Embassy Gardens, you just look at that front page of the betting. Horses with a whole host of multiple entries and other engagements that could easily all just dissipate off in different directions, leaving, the way I look at it, kind of Hermes Allen and Good Land towards the top of the market there. So, yeah, Hermes Allen, for once, the English have a horse at the top of a market in a novice hurdle event. I mean, you have to almost do a double take, don't you? And, Hermes Allen, very good in shallow hurdle. The form's not working out too badly at all. I see the horse, Jamie Snowdon's, who was fourth in that race, passing well. I mean, he was stuffed in the shallow hurdle, to put it bluntly, and passing well's come out and won doing handstands earlier in the week for Jamie Snowdon. And clearly the best kind of intermediate distance novice hurdler in England. Just got to shake that old curse of the shallow hurdle, haven't you? Which seems to be a bit of a graveyard for Cheltenham Festival winners in recent years. But Good Land, very, very nice horse. Probably playing the percentages. You'd say Hermes Allen, Good Land, and Imperial Pass are the three on that page probably make it to the race if I was going to have a punt now. Yeah, no real strong view on it. Yeah, Emma's got a strong view on it. She's locked in the value. This is a race, as I say. I'm just kind of sitting tight with it at the moment, but yeah, with too many unknowns from an anti-post point of view.
Yeah, Vincent, do you share that view as well?
Yeah, I do. Well, Goodland is obviously, look, you could back worst 4-1 chances, non-runner, no bet, because I can't see the horse being a huge amount bigger, because most of these won't run, is the other thing in this particular race. And there is the possibility that Impere Pass, depending on what happens, Facile Vega may go for the Supreme. So that is a little bit of a possibility there. Gaelic Warrior probably doesn't run here either, and several of the others. So for me, there's one at a big price, just maybe a little squeak, is a horse called Shanbally Kid. It's a Gigginstown horse with Willie Mullins. Very big price, but not certain to run here either. Like most of these, you're just never sure which race they're going to go for. But this would look the most likely target to me, because it's been winning over 2 miles 3, 2 miles 4. So you'd be thinking that if it did have a go, there we go. We found it in the end down at 40-1. Look, this is wide open stuff, and not for me particularly. I think there's better races to be going at this stage, anti-post, on this particular one, where it's definitely a muddle. The only thing we do know is Goodland definitely runs, and Hermes Allen, I suppose, as well. But Goodland certainly comes in here with a hell of a performance, and the stable confidence behind the horse is very, very strong.
And Stephen, for you, anything extra to add there?
Not loads, but I did think that Goodland race was really strong. It was a properly run race, and I wouldn't say there's going to be loads between all of those who ran in it. Goodland still improving, a nice horse, definitely the best of the Irish so far as we know. Hermes Allen, that form from Newbury, the third has come out and won, but a couple of the others have come out and got well beaten. So mixed vibes. I mean, it was really impressive. He's not going to run before Cheltenham, which I suppose is suboptimal. You know, he's going to have had 2.5 months off between winning over Christmas and running at Cheltenham, so that'll be a slight doubt, but obviously he'll be fully fit and ready. He's certainly by a distance the best English challenger, and he looks a fantastic prospect for fences next season for Paul Nicholls. So I don't think there's much to argue about the prices, though.
I mean, yeah, that's actually a little question I wanted to add as well. I mean, how much are you looking at this, the novice hurdle form, with a view to then potential later years and potential value?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you don't get many secrets, do you, at Cheltenham? Most people know, you know, you buy these sort of hundreds of follow horses, and they're all the horses who ran at Cheltenham. It always tickles me when horses run in the champion bumper and they come out and win over hurdles next year. There's 24 of them, and every day somebody said, "Oh, that was in my 10 to follow." Well, it's in everyone's flipping 10 to follow, you know, running the champion bumper. So there aren't many secrets, but you do see things. Certainly, if you watch a lot of these trials races back, I try and watch the horses who don't win, who finish third or fourth, who you think were a bit unlucky or didn't get the best ride, rather than the sort of obvious winners who are trained by Mullins and ridden by Townend that everybody else has seen.
Yeah, perfect. And sticking with you, Stephen, as well, looking ahead to the next race, going to talk about the Brown Advisory. Can you take us through, again, how you see this market shaping up and who stands out for you?
Well, let's get it up on screen. My computer's actually frozen. There we are. Jerry Colomb. Jerry Colomb won at Sandown over the weekend, and I think definitely runs in this race. Now, he was very weak in the market. We were all worried about goodish ground, weren't we? But actually, at Sandown on Saturday, they were making a proper print. It was good to soft. I thought it might be on the sort of faster side of good, and he could be in trouble. Now, he went in snatches a bit, but he made one mistake down the back, but he jumped superbly in the main, and essentially, he is a thorough stayer. 3 miles at Cheltenham will definitely suit him. Mighty Potter's going to run in the Turners. Galliard de Mesnil, I think, is going to run in National Hunt Chase. Is that right, Ed?
The real most likely for him.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah. The real whacker, I think, has been flattered from the front in small fields at Cheltenham. Very flattered last time for me. So, you know, I think Jerry Colomb at around 3-1 is probably a very fair price. It got scope and upside over fences, and loads more to come. And the further he goes, the better. I thought it was a pretty smart performance at Sandown. The horse of Nicky Henderson, Falco Coastal, jumped as well as he's jumped over fences and gave him a proper race and was extremely well backed. But I was very taken with Jerry Colomb. He certainly won't want for lack of stamina, that's for sure.
And Ed, for you as well, do you share that view?
I do, actually. I think you can upgrade that form massively. The big fears beforehand. I mean, Gordon Elliott was saying, he said the plan was to bring him to the Scilly Isles for a bog. As you say, see by how singed the daffodils are in Stephen's back garden there, that the sun came out of the Esher venue, and you say, according to the jockeys, the ground was just riding a little bit dead, just on the slow side of good to soft, and yet over 2.5 miles, he's not a one-trick pony. He's not a plodder. He was pretty sharp. You got to jump round Sandown. It's a fences come thick and fast. He's a big old unit. He jumped really well, and he powered up the hill, having come up off the bridle. Yeah, I'm normally looking for things at bigger prices. I think Jerry Colom is ticking a lot of the right boxes there, to be honest with you. He's the right favourite. I can see him starting a lot shorter, given the way this market's going to cut up considerably. The absolute joker in the pack here is Sir Gerhard. It sounds more and more like he's going to run, according to Willie Mullins, because he's got so much strength and depth in the other divisions. Now, on hurdle form, he's on a different postcode in terms of raw ability to the rest of these horses. He'll be giving Jerry Colom about 2 stone in a handicap hurdle. Well, no, it's not. I mean, he was a Ballymore winner. He's unbeaten at Cheltenham. He's a Grade 1 winning hurdler of the highest ability. I just still don't quite know what to make of his chase debut. Yes, in the end, he came home from Largy debut in splendid isolation, but he nearly... he left a hole, the size of Ireland in one of the fences, didn't he? I mean, he nearly took it home with him, and he made a couple of niggling errors. It seems a strange kind of preparation to go to the Brown Advisory on the back of one chase start. I've got to credit Tony Keenan of At the Races for this stat, who actually says Willie Mullins has never sent a horse to the Brown Advisory on the back of one chase start before, as far as he can see from his database. It seems a very unusual preparation. Maybe Mullins is thinking, in this kind of year, with his raw ability in a race that could cut up to 6 or 7 runners, his raw ability could see him get away with it. I can see that angle because, as I said, his hurdling ability. I mean, crikey, if you go run Sir Gerhard against a real whacker in it over hurdles, I mean, you're talking different postcodes. So I could see Sir Gerhard going off a lot shorter just because he's unbeaten at Cheltenham. He's a Grade 1 winning hurdler, and in the end, it could end up being a 5 or 6 runner race where he's kind of in a match against Jerry Colom. But so he is the total joker in the pack. But if you were pushing me now to who to go with, I'm looking no further than Jerry Colom. I think that Sandown run ticked all the right boxes. 3 miles, good to soft. A small enough field, you get a great sight of his fences. I think of all the kind of novice chasers, I think he's as an argument, he's a little bit overpriced.
Yeah, and Vincent as well, for your take on the race.
Yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off Jerry Colom anyway. Still unbeaten. That's the key for me there too. The other one for me, just one of a bit of a bigger prices. Gentleman's Game. Mouse Morris has this. It was a 1-4-6 over hurdles. Has done very little wrong over fences. Beat I Am Maximus 8 lengths the last day. I Am Maximus was only beaten 11 lengths in the Mighty Potter race at the Dublin Racing Festival, so the form is pretty decent there, I would have thought, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that it should run here. That's the first thing, that this is the race for the horse. You would imagine at Cheltenham, and shouldn't be too far away. If Mouse Morris, he doesn't always tend to run his horses at Cheltenham. He only runs the ones that have real chances, and if this runs, you can take it each way. Bet would definitely be a play.
Lovely stuff. All right, let's move on to the Champion Chase. Now, this one, again, is a very interesting market. Just, Stephen, take us through your thoughts on how the market is shaping up at this stage.
Well, I have got quite strong views here. I mean, the trouble is Edwardstone has bruised a foot, apparently, according to Alan King. Not a serious setback, but it's not ideal with sort of 4.5 weeks to go, is it? I thought he ran perfectly well. He just got battled up the hill by Editor Digit in one of those sort of mystery Cheltenham races where you can't believe he didn't win. He was 1.01. I thought Energamine got a very ordinary ride from Paul Townend in that same race, over racing under restraint, kept jumping into the backside of horses all the way round, and then sort of panic stations, rapid headway and a bad blunder at the wrong time, weakened up the hill. I mean, I think Energamine has got the most ability of all of these, probably by 6 or 7 lengths, the best horse. But how will this race be run on the day? Well, it looks like Editor Gigi and Gentleman to Me will both run in this race. Well, they're both bang front runners. So they're going to go a real gallop. I don't fancy either of them as a result. I think they're bound to ruin each other. There's not going to be any hiding place. So it's set up for a hold-up horse, and probably Edwardstone is more of a natural hold-up horse than Energamine is. I mean, they could try and lead with Energamine. Not impossible. It failed trying to cover him up last time, it didn't work at all. He pulled hard and didn't jump particularly well under restraint. Maybe there'll be eyeballs out with a Energumene as well, in which case they could be a real burn up front. It's a fascinating race. I mean, instinctively, they're both far too short, aren't they? 6-4 and 7-4 is 7-2 on coupled, the pair of them. Well, if you're a bookmaker, both of them have got a bit to prove. Energumene was a bit disappointing at a short price the other day, and Edwardstone's bruised his foot and couldn't get past Editor Digit. I'm not sure I want to bet 7-2 on. I suspect on the day it might be another one of those markets where the true prices are much bigger than they actually are now.
And Ed, your view as well?
It's a lovely muddling affair, isn't it? It has to be said. I suppose the one horse, especially for the Dublin Racing Festival, we're not giving enough kudos to here, is Gentleman to Me, who absolutely romped in, didn't he? And now myself and Stephen were discussing this horse on the preview show at the back end of last week, saying he's a bit of an enigma in the sense that he just seems to turn his form inside out as he hits the spring. He did this last year. He showed absolutely nothing before Christmas. The sun came out and his form took off to new levels. Of course, let's not forget he absolutely thumped Edwardstone when they met at Aintree. I think there's a bit of juice in his price at 12-1 here, especially as you say, Edwardstone's had a minor setback. Energumene, very disappointing last time out. Blue Lord, obviously absolutely stuffed in behind him. I've been harping on for ages. I'm convinced they've got to go the Ryanair chase with Blue Lord. I think that will be I just don't think he has the raw gears on drying ground over 2 miles. The one time he tackled 2.5 was in the Clonmel Oil Chase, where I think he outstayed a former King George winner in Tornado Flyer. I'd love to see him in the Ryanair Chase, personally, speaking through my pocket, but I think he'd be in a match against Allaho. But yeah, a Gentleman to Me, double figure price. I think that's fair cop. He's, by all accounts, he's going to the race. If the Costa del Gloucester continues, if he gets a proper spring ground, he could bomb off in front. With all these kind of question marks about some of these horses in behind, it could make a few of them think. I suppose Editor Digit is the other pace angle. He's a horse whose form's really gone to new levels after that Kempton win, and then was given a brilliant ride to give Niall Houlihan his first Grade 1 win in the rearranged Clarence House at Cheltenham, and that horse is maybe just blossoming. But I get the feeling, we should sound churlish, he was the best horse on the day. And what I mean by that is I think perhaps Energumene didn't run to his best. Edwardstone perhaps would come on fitness-wise for that. And I think that might have been his day, for want of a better phrase. And I think you'll find things tougher here. So Gentleman to Me, 12-1, does seem a bit big given the evidence we've seen lately.
And Vincent as well, do you share that view? How impressed were you with Gentleman to Me?
Oh, I was just shocked that the horse can be so crazy with his poor performances followed by exceptional performances. I thought when he beat Edwardstone in Aintree last year, I thought that was performance of the season for a 2-mile chaser myself. I thought it was absolutely exceptional that day. But then you queried, had Edwardstone gone over the boil a little bit or off the boil a little bit after his Arkle win? Perhaps so, but it was still a hell of a performance. But the run at Christmas at Leopardstown, he's beaten 41.5 lengths by Blue Lord. And then he comes out the other day and beats Blue Lord 7 lengths. Like that's astonishing turnaround. That's Ronan McNally style improvement in form from one run to the next. Like you would, like as I said, we did a show yesterday. I was saying you'd fear for poor LJP here. He could lose that race yet in a couple of years' time. They'll take the prize money back off because it was such an improvement in form. It's crazy stuff. Could he improve another 48 lengths again when he goes to Cheltenham? Perhaps he could, because we don't know what this horse is like. The Aintree run last year was exceptional in my opinion, and I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, this is the best 2-miler around. And then he flopped again until he produced a similar level last weekend. So I certainly wouldn't rule anyone out backing him, but Cheltenham I don't think is a course that's going to suit him. I thought Aintree was perfect for him last year. I didn't necessarily think he was going to bounce back at Leopardstown, but Cheltenham the hill mightn't be what he really wants. But having said that, he certainly, if as Ed says there, I see there's 12-1. I can't believe there's 12-1. That seems an unbelievable each way price in the race we're in here. The other one here is a mad one in there too. We finally put the record straight. Is Shakin Pour Soi. Hard to believe he's not retired yet, but he's still in there. How many times has he gone to the UK? 3 or 4 times. 3 times to the UK. Flopped every single time. Tried him over 2.5 the last day. God help us if he turns up and wins. That'd really put the cat among the pigeons, wouldn't it? But it's been that sort of a race Antepost all season. I've never seen anything like this. That every time a horse jumps to the top of the market, something else something happens him and something else produces a performance after it. So it really is a crazy race, this.
But again, something to very much look forward to in March. Let's move on to day 3. So we're going to look at the Turners. And again, Ed, just take us through your thoughts on this race at the moment, how it shapes up. Obviously, Mighty Potter leading the way. We've also got to appreciate it. Banbridge in there in the market at the moment. But how do you see it shaping up come March?
I suppose they're the two to take out of it, aren't they? I mean, Mighty Potter, very impressive in the way he jumped, travelled. I mean, he's a real imposing sort, and he got it done in very good style. Again, if you were going to be finicky, you'd say maybe the form of that isn't as strong as perhaps, in my view, the Al Fabiolo form, in the sense that, I mean, he was adamantly chosen as second. It's your National Hunt Chase favourite in third. But all in all, look, you kind of clutch at straws a little bit there. It was very, very good. With the view to Cheltenham, it is just lingering in the back of my mind. Obviously, he was pulled up at the festival last year, and Gordon Elliott said the occasion got to him a little bit. He was a young horse. He didn't travel over all that well. Then he made a mistake down the back, and he thinks perhaps Gordon Elliott's view is nothing actually specifically to do with Cheltenham. It was just the occasion was too much for him for a young horse. He's totally different now. He's grown up. He's bigger. He's more mature mentally as much as anything. And yeah, look, he's the right favourite. It has to be said. I just got that in my... one bad run at Cheltenham, when it's that bad, just always lurks in the back of my mind. You know, we're not talking about an 8 or 10 to 1 poke here. This horse could be going off even money to win a Grade 1. That's just my only reservation. If you're on it, the 12 to 1 that was available at the start of the season, good luck to you. You're in a stunning position. And then I suppose the other horse I did mention there, Banbridge, ran according to Joseph O'Brien. An excellent trial for this. Obviously, he's got winning form at the Cheltenham Festival over hurdles over a similar trip to this. He dropped back to 2 miles earlier in the season at Cheltenham and won the Arkle trial there in inverted commas. It sounds like they're going to go this way unless the ground gets quite deep. Because let's not forget, over soft ground at Christmas, Banbridge almost went out like a light behind Mighty Potter and didn't get home over 2.5 miles, if you see what I'm saying. So I think Banbridge is in danger of becoming a little bit of a hard horse to place. But it does sound like on spring ground, he will have another crack at Mighty Potter over this trip. But yeah, again, a race where I'm going through them. It's hard to kind of nail your colours to the mast of anything that's slightly bigger prices. But I imagine this looks of Mighty Potter against Banbridge on the day. I suppose Appreciate It probably will run here by default, but I put a line through him. I personally think my view, he's just been exposed. You know, he's 9 now. He's not a 5-6-year-old coming through the ranks. Appreciate It. If I was an Appreciate It backer or fan, I'd be worried that what we saw at the weekend is what Appreciate It is. I don't really see as much improvement coming. Where's the improvement going to come from? As opposed to some of these younger horses who I'd say are arguably on a much more of a steep upward curve. So, right favourite. I'm going to try and find something at 40 to 1 and probably update you on next week's show, because there's got to be something in there lurking. It's going to be a 6-7 runner race. There's got to be a 40 to 1 poke who's the each way value. I'm relying on Vincent and Stephen to find it because I haven't found it yet.
Well, Stephen, have you got it for us?
No, I think the favourite's probably a good bet at 6 to 4. And I try not to say that at Cheltenham. I mean, none of them are going to run, are they? I mean, there's a horse in here 10 to 1, James de Burley. It ran at the Dublin Racing Festival. We got beaten 3 fences. I mean, how is it 10 to 1? These races are priced up by firms who somebody looks at them once a week, and there's no thought gone into it really. They all copy each other because there's no liquidity, so it's just a guess. I mean, what price would you want to back James de Burley at? I mean, I wouldn't take 100. I mean, it's not. It probably won't run. It's got to be a distance 4 weeks before this race. I mean, maybe there was an excuse, but you can't. But Mighty Potter was really impressive. He jumped well. He found strongly for pressure. The only doubt, as Ed said, he's absolutely right. It's run once out of Ireland, pulled up in the Supreme. And by the way, he was pulled up a long way out there. There was something. He ran absolutely appallingly in the race. Constitution Hill won, came home alone. So that's the only negative I can think. I think Banbridge, in truth, I mean, I did have a few quid each way on Banbridge and Phil Dorr, I think, as well on the same car. Banbridge ran really well, but he probably was flattered by being ridden from out of the heat of that race and picked up the pieces late. He wants good ground. One thing we haven't touched on, I mean, we're not magicians, but I mean, the weather forecast for the next 2 weeks in the UK is dry and bright mainly. There's no rain forecast at all. So we're then 2 weeks away from Cheltenham. I mean, it's got to rain at some point. Otherwise,
Oh, no.
I know Newbury this weekend, I've been told they're not able to water and it's going to be fast ground. I mean, there could be no runners at Newbury. We'll see later in the week. But I think trainers are starting to get worried again about the weather because, you do need, I mean, they'll water at Cheltenham. It won't be fast ground at Cheltenham, but it's not going to be real soft, heavy testing ground. Mighty Potter, of course, coming back to Mighty Potter, he has won on good ground at Punchestown, so he won't be worried about good ground. I think he's definitely going to run. He's not going to run in any of the other races. He could be one of those. He could be sort of 11 or 8 on the day because, again, there could be 5 or 6 runners only. And he's progressive. I would imagine Davy Russell will be on unless Jack Kennedy makes a miracle recovery. So Mighty Potter, I thought, was the standout contender. Appreciate it was disappointing. There's no doubt about that. I thought he had every chance, and he was disappointing in Ireland. Perhaps he's the second in, but no, I was with the favourite here, to be truthful.
Yeah, and Vincent, for you, would you take a line through, appreciate it after the run on the weekend?
I would be tending to, yeah. Realistically, I think, look, Mighty Potter was most impressive, is a worthy favourite. As you say, could start a very short price. I thought Banbridge ran a fair trial for this now. Wouldn't be surprised to see Banbridge definitely second favourite on the day. Major contender, but probably won't be good enough to beat Mighty Potter. There's one in here, maybe Journey With Me, Henry de Bromhead. Wasn't beaten too far, half a length by Impervious the last day. Had won well the previous day. This looks to be the optimum trip for the horse. Impervious obviously goes for the mare's race instead of this. I think Journey With Me could be an each way bet here, potentially at the sort of price. You're talking 12-1 non-runner no bet wouldn't be a bad play at this stage because there's a lot of the others here won't be running. I wouldn't have thought on what we've seen from them recently.
All right, I think that covers it quite nicely. Let's move on to the Ryanair. So again, in here, I want to just talk about Blue Lord after his disappointment at the weekend. Ed, for you, is Allaho just the runaway favourite? What can beat him?
I think quite a lot could beat him here, to be honest with you. I think this race is an absolute mess. In terms of Antepost, you've got Allaho clearly. It's on best form. He's operating on an elite different level, but it's a fair ask. I mean, Willie Mullins has done it before with horse, hasn't he? Getting them to turn up first time out to the festival. But, he's got to prove the old fires still burn. He's a 9-year-old now. He's coming back from injury. I would be finding anything to have a go at him, to be honest with you. If you're going to get him beaten, this is the time to get him beaten, isn't it? Compared to previous years where he had, I'll go back to that race a couple of years ago. We had 165 rated chasers coming home on a breathalyzer. I mean, I think Min was pulled up 2 out. Pura Laura literally couldn't go to gallop. They were strewn out all over Prestbury Park with Allaho about 40 lengths clear. He's got to prove he is still that horse. We're taking it on trust. At even money, he is still that horse. If I was Anthony Bromley and Isaac Sway, Simon Manier, Willie Mullins, I would be ready Blue Lord in this. So I think this is the perfect race for him. He's got good form at the Cheltenham Festival, albeit in defeat. He would have been second in the Supreme if he hadn't fallen. I'd love to see him over 2.5 miles. They tried the trip at the start of the season on very deep ground in the Clonmel Oil Chase, and he saw out the trip perfectly. Despite being a little bit keen. And that was a big tick in the box. And I think they thought, well, that was the route they were going to go. But then having caused the upset against Chacun Pour Soir, he's kind of been shuffled back down into the 2-mile route. I just think on drying ground, he won't have the gears against those top 2-milers. I think this would be the race for him. And going back to my original point, Joe, when I say this race is a mess, well, you've got Allaho's on the sidelines. You've got Shishkin, who could be nearer retirement than winning. You've got Conflated going to a Gold Cup. You've got Pig Dorey, who Paul Nicholls says is have an entry, but entry's probably more his bag. Envoy Allen unlikely to run. I mean, Hitman, I'd be shocked if he ran. Fanny Destreval nowhere near good enough. It's a decent, but has loads to. You use this So Royale, well, he's just been scratched from the Champion Chase. He's 11-year-old, not good enough. Chacun Pour Soir, he's like Beeful Salmon Part 2. This race, again, see what I'm saying? This is a 5-runner race. I'd be, to be honest with you, Blue Lord, I think, will be in a match bet against Allaho. I suppose, again, the inverted commas, the joker in the pack is Fakir Duderi. They swerved Allaho last year to keep him fresh for Aintree, a track which he's got very good form at, and were kind of vindicated in that decision. I just wonder if they may rethink that this year. I think, again, if we're going to get Allaho beaten, this is the time to take him on. For what it's worth, it sounds like Fakir Duderi is going to take on Shishkin in a week or so's time at Ascot in that 2-mile 5 race. So that will probably sort a few things out there. But all in all, I just, again, Allaho, brilliant horse. Is he still Allaho? I would be, Blue Lord non-runner, no bet my angle. I would definitely be going that route. But a race again, Joe, I could see cutting up to 5 or 6 runners.
Yeah, and Stephen, for you, I mean, how big a negative is it that we've not seen Allaho, since April?
I mean, I think Allaho will win if turns up sort of 90% of the horse he was last year. I mean, he's made this race his own. There was one year, I think it was a couple of years ago, actually, I thought Rachel Blackmore rode him, and I thought she'd got an absolutely ridiculous gallop. I was pressing the lay button after 3 or 4 jumps, thinking this is madness, and it just went further and further and further away. I mean, it's really well suited by this 2 mile 4 trip. Going to get in a positive attacking ride. If the horse is right, I think it'll win. I mean, all of them have got questions to answer. The horse I can't have them like 7-1 Shishkin. I mean,
I knew that was coming.
Need to want to back that? I mean, the horse is definitely, again, we said about Facile Vega earlier. Once they've gone, these horses, they've gone. Very, very rarely do they get revived from a really, really bad physically amiss effort. Something went wrong with Shishkin at odds on last year. Came back at Sandown in the Tingle Creek, at pounds, shillings and pence, all the stable lads on, 6-5 putting on, never went a yard, got beaten 15 lengths by Edwardstone, very laboured, not the same horse, completely gone. And they've suddenly backfitted her. Well, it's too sharp for him now, 2 miles. He needs too much. It's got nothing to do with the trip. The horse has got something wrong with him. He's not right. For whatever reason, he won't ever come back. I mean, I couldn't take 7-1. I haven't really got a strong opinion. I think if Allaho's right, he'll probably win.
Yeah, and Vincent as well, just to cover it off. Do you share that same view as well?
Oh, I do. If Allaho's right, there is no second. That's the bottom line in this. But is he right? He had 2 engagements late last year, November, December. He was due to run in 2 different races, taken out with what we were told were niggling problems, nothing major. And now they've decided to go here without a run. The thing for me is, if Blue Lord runs here, you would imagine that that's because they know Allaho is not a certainty because they're from the same yard, whereas Blue Lord will most likely run the Champion Chase. So I would expect Blue Lord running the Champion Chase, because if Allaho is right, there's no point in running Blue Lord here. They won't beat Allaho, and they've more of a chance of winning the other race. But if there was a niggling doubt about Allaho, how he was performing at home, I could see Blue Lord turn up here, and then it changes the complexion of the race, in my opinion. The other one that Ed touched on is Fakir Dudaris. He's not as good as Allaho. Has been finished behind the horse on a load of occasions. But having said that, he looks a solid each way play here, I would have thought. I think they have to come here this year because of the question marks over Allaho. So I would have thought Fakir Dudaris runs and will be a solid each way bet at the likes of 6-1. I don't think he'll be getting that on the day, because this will definitely cut up this race.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to the biggest race of the day on day 3, the Stayers Hurdle. Ed, just take us through again. You've got Tehupu here as the favourite. But yeah, any kind of value elsewhere beyond the favourite for you?
Well, I suppose, yeah, Tehupu, Joe, obviously the market leader, as you say, 9-4, 5-2. There's got to be some value elsewhere now. Again, if you're on at bigger prices, you're smiling. But Tehupu, it was a brilliant performance, wasn't it, to win the Galmoy. Ran away from his rivals. The raw form of it is rubbish. I mean, Somerville Boy is 11. And he had Longhouse Poet in there, of course, having a grand national fitness run. But look, he did it in devastating fashion. The problem is now, if you're taking 5-2 about Tehupu, you're taking 5-2 about a horse who's got no Cheltenham form, or pretty much no Cheltenham form. And we had Robbie Power as our guest on the show during Jump to It last year, and he said he felt that the ground was far too quick for him at Cheltenham as well. So 5-2 about a horse who with no Cheltenham form, wants off ground, it's got to be a worry at that type of price. And then to use that old phrase, Joe, I said I think you could throw a blanket over loads of these, and it's just absolute bit of an equine conundrum, isn't it? Home by the Lee, solid, but I can't get out of my head the fact he was well beaten in this race last year. Maybe he has just improved. Blazing Cow hasn't been seen since medieval times, but I think there is a glimmer of hope now, isn't he? I think he's got an entry, hasn't he, in the Boyne Hurdle. Again, though, is his raw form good enough to make him a 5-1 poke? I mean, he beat Gelino Bello a year ago. I mean, Gelino Bello would be, well, probably is about 100-1 to win this. Gold Tweet, not even entered in the race at the moment. I believe they only ran him in the Cotswold Chase because the French owners fancied a weekend break in the Cotswolds. And now they've ended up with a horse who's 8-1 to win a Stayers Hurdle. You keep going through it, and again, it's that type of race. The one in here who is a standout to me if she were to line up, would be Marie's Rock. And I'm starting to get the feeling this is where she's going. And Nicky Hendon's saying it's 70-30 Epatante runs in the mares. And now Honeysuckle's kind of been parachuted into the mares. I wonder if they're looking at Marie's Rock and thinking, this is a total winnable opportunity here. So, yeah, all in all, bit of a head scratcher. I haven't totally given up on my old friend Paisley Park if we did get a wet week. It was a falsely run race on trials day where they crawled round, turned into a sprint, and say the French horse who had 2 mile hurdle form was just the quickest horse and ran away from them. I don't think that's his... he's been written off before, Paisley Park, and come back. Only a month ago, he was winning a Grade 1 and looking pretty much as good as he ever was. So at 20-1, he's probably a little bit overpriced, given I'd imagine he'll be at his best on the day. So, I think a very ground-dependent race, Joe. On softer, heavy ground, Tehupu, I can see him going off even shorter than this. But as I said, the sun's beating down on me in a moment. I'm getting my factor 50 on, and if this continues for another month or so, you would be very nervous about taking 9-4, 5-2 about Tehupu.
And Vincent as well, do you share that view on the stayers?
I do. I think Tehupu is very ground dependent, in my opinion. If this comes up good to yielding, something like that on the day, I wouldn't be backing Tehupu. I'd be opposing that horse, that's for sure. The one I really like, if the horse is right, is Blazing Cal. I think Blazing Cal. I think Charles Burns thinks he has a star in his hands here. This has been a plan for more than a year, I would imagine. The problem is the horse has taken a lot longer to get right than he thought it would this season, so he's missed a few early opportunities, but he is entered this Sunday. And if he does run Sunday and runs and wins, be a short price for this. I think he goes favourite if he runs and wins on Sunday. That's the big question, is will he? He's had a few almost runs earlier in the season as well when there was talk about he was going to come out, but he never got there. So let's hope he gets there Sunday, and if he does, I think he's a very, very good horse. He'll certainly shake up the market one way or the other, whether he runs or he doesn't run. The market will change after Sunday.
Lovely stuff. All right, well, let's move on to day 4 on the card. So I want to talk about the Triumph Hurdle next. Obviously, Lossiemouth beaten at the Dublin Racing Festival. But Stephen, just take us through your thoughts on that performance from Lossiemouth, and how would it affect her chances going into the Triumph?
Well, I actually think she enhanced her claims. I mean, the bookmakers didn't agree. She was a very short price for the Triumph. I think she was odds on, wasn't she, in some places? And she's now nudging 2-1, which I think is a perfectly fair price now. She was thought to be the best that they've had. She was an extremely unlucky loser. I think you can probably rate her winning by 5 lengths if you're being, unkind in a way. I think she was by far the best. She lost at least 10 lengths at the wrong time when the pacemaker fell back in her lap. And I don't really think it was Paul Townend's fault. Apparently, the owner was absolutely fuming afterwards, but he's just had a few things go against him of late, Paul Townend. And obviously, Facile Vega didn't help, and Energumene certainly didn't help at Cheltenham previously, but in this instance I don't think he was at fault, and I think Lossiemouth remains the one to beat. But it's a difficult race to have a massively strong opinion about because Willie Mullins basically controls it. The best of the English ones is Scriptwriter, who got just worried out of things by Comfort Zone here at the last meeting. He's probably the best British horse. Affodil is progressing nicely. He won a Triumph Hurdle trial at Musselburgh over the weekend, but he scrambled home there. I would be absolutely amazed if he was good enough. In truth, I'd be surprised if Scriptwriter was good enough. I think long and the short of it, Ireland will dominate. And I think if you haven't sort of backed Lossiemouth, 2-1, if you can find it, it's probably bigger than that on the exchanges, is probably a fair enough price now.
Lovely. I think that covers that pretty nicely. Vincent, we're going to move on to you and one of your picks actually now for the festival. Looking at the Albert Bartlett, just take us through one of your potential value picks for that race.
Yeah, my value pick may not run here. That's the only little thing, because it's trained by Gordon Elliott. It ran at the weekend. It's called Cool Survivor. It finished 4th to Goodland on the opening day of the Dublin Racing Festival. I really fancy the horse for this particular race. I think it's made for it, but Gordon Elliott is talking. He did a press open day with some of the UK press yesterday, and he's talking about going for the Martin Pipe, which is a race he always wants to win because he worked with Martin Pipe in the beginning of his career. This is the race made for him. I think he will run here. I hope he turns up here. I think he's got a big chance, in the sense that he was ridden very differently in the Leopardstown race than he had been in his previous starts. If you go back to his previous three runs, where he had a couple of wins as well, he made the running over long distances and won. The previous day in December down in Cork, he was beaten by the horse that's favoured for this race, Hidden Valley Lake. He gave £3 to Hidden Valley Lake that day over 3 miles, and was beaten 8 lengths. So, okay, you can say on the basis that he's probably 5 lengths worse than Hidden Valley Lake on that basis, but that mightn't be too far off here. 5 lengths off Hidden Valley Lake, plus the fact that in the Leopardstown race, this horse didn't make the running. It was only over 2 mile 5. It was a shorter trip, and they dropped him out last. I was very surprised with that, but he rattled home. If you watch that race again, if you get a chance with the Goodland race, Goodland was very impressive and is going to be a major contender for the Ballymore. But Cool Survivor didn't lose an ounce of ground with him from before the last to the line. He was staying on as well as the winner did and came through, only beaten the neck for third. I think he's a contender here, but having said that, Hidden Valley Lake at the top of the market, that's due to run in a race on the 16th of February in Clonmel. It's a race that Manila Indo finished second to Allaho in before and went on to win this particular race in Cheltenham. So Henry de Bromhead has penciled that in as the next start. Hidden Valley Lake in that race, it's the 16th on a Thursday in Clonmel. If Hidden Valley Lake wins there, which you'd expect it should over this trip, it'll be a shorter price for this race.
Yeah, I think that covers it quite nicely. And on to the final race we're going to preview on our Antepost special, the Gold Cup, of course. Galopin Des Champs, the favourite. Ed, just take us through your assessment of his performance at Leopardstown. Did he just enhance his claims for the Gold Cup?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Joe. Do you know, I'm still fence sitting in regards to Galopin Des Champs. I try and not rattle on for about 15 minutes here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. There was something about it which just didn't get my pulse racing. But the more I've watched it back, the more impressed I am with his performance, in the sense that he really hit the line full of running. Now, the question mark about Galopin Des Champs going into it is, like, we know he uses class, we know he's a brilliant horse. His stamina is the one potential chink in his armour which everyone's looking to exploit. Well, if anything, he looked better the further he went in that race. And almost so kind of conversely, he disappointed me because he didn't travel all over everything like he's used to doing. He's naturally, as he's getting older, he was ridden with a bit more restraint, he relaxed, and he took a bit of a while to get going. And so that's, I suppose, is the thing which is in the back of my brain, which is slightly worrying me, is not the fact he hit the line strongly. It's a horse like Fury Road, who's a good horse, but not a spectacular horse, got Galopin Des Champs off the bridle. And jumping the last, there wasn't much between them, and the Fury Road skewed the last, made a bit of an error, and Galopin Des Champs power clear to the line. It's more the price, I suppose, is what's not floating my boat. There was a mixed reaction amongst bookmakers here. Some cut him, some were not impressed at all, some left him where he was, and I can understand that viewpoint. I think whichever way you kind of slice it up, there's different positives and negatives to take from it. At the end of the day, look, he's won an Irish Gold Cup by nearly 9 lengths, pulling further clear. In itself, that's ticked a lot of the kind of stamina questions we were worrying about him. You know, it's not like he was kind of 5 lengths clear jumping the last and then fell in a hole and scrambled home. He did look better the further he went. But if you took Fury Road as the strict kind of collateral form, it's decent form, but it's not. Is it kind of 6-4 to win a Gold Cup form? If you look at Conflated in the Savills Chase, was it? He beat Fury Road by a not too dissimilar distance, and he's 12-1. It's just the price which I think is irking me, Joe. And I was looking back through the history books again. You know, Best Mate was a shade of odds on to win his 3rd Gold Cup. You think of everything he'd proven to that point. You know, Corto Star went off 8-11 to win his 2nd Gold Cup, having already won 98 King Georges and 5 Betfair Chases or whatever. And yet, Galopin Des Champs is even money in a few places here, having beaten Fury Road 8 lengths. So all in all, I think it's the price I'm not mad about. I still think in his price is the kind of final synopsis. There's still an element of more hype than actual raw staying chase substance built into his price. It's not to say he can't win it. It's just the kind of the backing him ship has sailed, if that makes sense. So look, there's 6-4 pokes running around market raising are probably better value in my view. So I'm naturally looking elsewhere.
Well, for you, Stephen, what is the right price then?
Well, I couldn't dream of backing it. I mean, the one question that did get answered is he the next superstar? Is he going to be a horse who's miles better than all of these staying chasers? And the answer to that is no. I mean, ITV Racing put out a tweet saying this was a sensational performance, and I thought I was watching another race. I mean, turning for him, he looked beat. I mean, he's a horse who's not short of speed. He's only run over 3 miles twice, and Willie's had the option to run him over 3 miles for the last 2 years. I don't think he'll stay 3 mile 2. I mean, I say Ed's right. It's at the price. If he was an 8-1 chance, we'd all be having our brains on him, wouldn't he? But he's a 6-4 chance. I mean, it's a terribly short price for a horse who looked in trouble. I don't like his running action. I don't like the way he jumps either. And the other thing is, in terms of sort of form, I mean, basically, Fury Road stopped after the last, disappeared over to the far side and stopped. You read it all back through his form. I mean, that Bob Ollinger form at the festival, all right, he was 2 fences in front of him when he fell, but it hasn't exactly worked out fantastically, has it? He's beaten Fakir Dudaris, who is what he is, perfectly good horse. He's beaten Fury Road. Now, the flip side of that is the horse I've liked for a long time for this race is Statler at 12-1. Now, unfortunately, he's now into single figures, but I thought he ran a perfectly good trial under a patient ride, and he definitely stays 3 mile 2, which you can't say about the favourite. So if you fancy the favourite at 6-4, first of all, you need to go and see a doctor. But secondly, you've got to fancy Statler very strongly at 8-1 each way, because he'll definitely stay, and he's definitely going to run in the race. So he's the one for me.
And Vincent as well. Do you share that view?
Yeah, I think the price is the only thing wrong with Galopin Des Champs. As I say, if it was 3-4-1, you'd be lumping on. Looks a great bet. Probably stay, not necessarily stay, but it's a real talent, this horse. This is a cracking race. Outside of that, there's so many different narratives to it. Hewick, what a story that'd be if this horse won. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Hewick running a big race may not. Look, if they all turn up on the day, all produce their best, I don't think Hewick will win. But the way this season has been going with all sorts of horses and the run that Shark Cannon is on with Hewick, I wouldn't be surprised. What a performance that would be if this turned up and won. You've got Noble Yates, can't rule that out either. Statler, another one. 4 mile horse, like, yes, stays. This is what we're going to be looking at here. Talking about Galopin Des Champs, will the horse stay? He's going to have to stay. He's got a Plutard, he's got Statler, he's got Noble Yates, all proven over the course and distance. Manila Indo as well, and everything else. This could be a cracker. Really could be a cracker. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's all a question of the ground. I think we're going to know a lot more closer to the time as well. So let's wrap up today's show. I think that covers everything we wanted to talk about. There's plenty more, of course, we could talk about. We haven't got hours as we would have liked to. But thanks a lot to Stephen Harris, Vincent Finegan and Ed Quigley, of course. We'll be back on Friday for a weekend preview. So plenty more betting tips coming your way. And be sure to tune in for more from irishracing.com coming your way very soon.